So Roger, this usually I do an icebreaker question,
Yeah,
but I think I read this about you.
right.
Do you like the Golden Girls?
Where did you read that?
I don't even know. I read all
Child,
this stuff about it.
I am obsessed with that show.
Yes.
Now, I'm
Excellent.
obsessed with that show really because
Mm-hmm.
of the period of time during which Christopher Lloyd was the story editor and was a
Yes.
writer on it. I found
Right.
those particular episodes to be the most savvy, the most
Mm-hmm.
political, and the most well constructed in terms of their conceit and the development of that conceit in a 20-minute period. Christopher Lloyd, y'all. Christopher Lloyd, child, don't rest on Mr. Lloyd, honey. Christopher Lloyd is the truth. He is not only tremendous actor and producer that we know about, but his earlier days, he was really just pioneering television writing.
Mm.
I mean, just phenomenal.
Well, see, I don't know. I think probably if I looked back, I might be able to see the difference now that
Yeah,
you said that.
yeah.
Um, I'm absolutely a fan, and I thought since you're obsessed, we
Yes.
could sing the theme song
Oh,
together. Are you
child.
ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
From being a
Being a friend,
friend, travel
traveling
down
down
the
the
road
road
and
and
back
back again.
again. My
My
heart
heart
is
is
true.
true.
I'm your
I'm your
friend
friend
and
and
a
a
confidant. Oh my
confidant.
God. And if you can, oh girl, we are not on key. It is fine.
You're killing it. It's so
Hold on,
good.
hold on. Let's get it.
Come on.
You would see the biggest things would be from me, and my heart attack would. Oh my God, I said heart attack. Mess. Impromptu. If I had rehearsed it. Oh my God. The line is you
She
would
threw
No,
that
that
out
see.
was
there.
that was
It
fun.
was you would see the biggest gift would be from
Gift
me,
would be from
and the
me,
card
and the
attached
card
would
attached
say,
would say,
"Thank you for
"Thank you
being a
for
friend."
being a
Oh
friend."
my
That's
God.
right.
Yes.
That's right. Roger Q. Mason in the
Yes. Thank
house.
you. Oh my
Thank you
God.
for that,
Oh yeah.
Roger. I am Laura Cathcart Robbins. This is the only one in the room, but I'm never the only one in this room because, as usual, my boyfriend, producer, and co host, Scott Slaughter, who I call Hun, is here as well.
Hey
Hi, honey.
Scott.
Hi, Roger.
You can call him Hun too if you'd
Well,
Yeah,
like,
you
let
can.
me
Roger.
tell you something. I'm into this denim shirt. I don't know if this is a video or audio podcast. See, some people know how to work indigo, and
Uh
you
huh.
you are one of those, sir. Let me
Ah,
just
thank you.
Yes.
tell
I
you.
I
Mhm.
just put this together this morning. I took an
I was
old
just
shirt
gonna
and cut the
say,
sleeves
yes.
Oh,
off.
you cut the sleeves off?
Uh, yeah, and
Ah,
so now I've been thinking about it for like a month, so I just went for it.
That's
he's
So thank
quite
beautiful.
you.
proud.
I,
He's
I,
quite proud
it's
of
well
his.
done.
Yes.
Thank
It's
you.
good.
He's a little costumer this morning.
There you go.
Um, so, Roger Q. Mason, you go by the pronouns they, them. Is that
I
correct?
am the they them queen. Yes, I am.
They, them, queen. All
Yes,
right.
honey.
So Roger is a Black Filipinx plus size gender nonconforming queer artist of color. And on your site, it
Mm,
says, my work employs the lens of history
yeah.
to chip away at the cultural biases that divide us rather than unite us.
Yes.
Which I love. I
Mm,
love. So I thought maybe we could break it down a little bit
yes.
and talk about these different identities, talk about Black, talk about Filipinx, talk about
Mm-hmm.
plus size,
Mm-hmm.
gender nonconforming,
Mm.
and queer, and then talk about your artistry as an artist and an artist of color.
Love it.
Um, so
Shall we go
let's
down the
talk about,
list?
yeah, let's go down the list. Let's talk about Black first, because
Yeah. Let's go.
yeah,
Let's go to black first. So
let's go to
my
Black.
my dad, my dad's
Mm-hmm.
family
Yeah.
is originally from Texas. Both sides of the family are from Texas. My
Mm-hmm.
grandmother is was a prairie girl from Del Valley outside of Austin, and my
Wow.
grandfather was a lawman. He was an attorney And his father was the first, one of the first blacks to get a law license in the state of Texas after slavery.
Mm.
And so he,
Wow.
right. And so he was actually that would have been my great grandfather, was in the text called Progress of a Race, which was essentially a commemorative essay, long essay about the progress of the Reconstruction era. And my great grandfather is featured in that book as having become, in the years after Reconstruction, a significant attorney in the city of Dallas. Both of them went to Howard University, and my grandmother had various sisters and brothers. I can't remember the number now, either 5 or 6, and many of them made the move in the it was the 1940s from Texas. Well, first they moved to Oklahoma City for a while, where my grandmother was a social worker. And then they later moved to Los Angeles in the 40s. So my family had been living in LA since the mid 1940s. And for many of those years, they lived in the same house, which was a house that they bought, and they lied to keep it. They said they were Spanish because they were Black and Irish, so some of them could pass.
Ooh.
You know, and as Moms Mabley, the great comedian, says, honey, I was trying to pass for anything except what I is.
Right.
So they said they were Spanish. And it's funny, you know, thinking about this idea of secrecy and the access that comes with a mutual lie, because passing is a lie where both parties agree to uphold it. Because the person passing and the person accepting the person to pass both know that the race in question is an invention. An invention that they must maintain in order to know that up is up, down is down, sun follows moon, moon follows sun, and the stars are up here. That sense of order in the world comes from me putting people in boxes. And so when I pass, all of a sudden I transcend and I disrupt. See, I'm trying to get you to disrupt that word that you brought up. I disrupt the moral and the civic code of order by which I can define and control people. So my family has always been and will always be disruptors. It's just in my DNA to be that person, because that's what I knew growing up. I knew that.
I was just going to say, I'm fascinated because your family's history is so similar to mine. My folks, the Cathcart side of my family, are from Texas, Oklahoma City. My Aunt Annie Mae was like the matriarch in Oklahoma City. And then my dad was born here in 1940 in Los Angeles. When they all moved here. And that migration.
We were on the same
for the better
train.
life.
We was on the same highway. I mean, perhaps literally. And I guess the highway brings me to Filipinx.
Please.
My
let's go
mother is from the Philippines. She moved to Los Angeles in 1980.
Okay.
And she came here with one purpose in mind, which was to send money back to her 4 brothers and sisters, because she had gone to a very fancy Catholic all-girls school, while her siblings, she felt, were struggling. And so she owed a duty to them to send money back. And she moved to Los Angeles. Several of her aunts were living here already. And this was the era of the fixed marriages, you know, for the green card and all of that. And the matchmaker movement and the sham marriage movement. Now, my mother's is one of the few marriages, perhaps, of that era that was real love. But many a sham was perpetuated. in that
Mm-hmm.
time with people not only from Filipino identity, but also other immigrant cultures trying to grasp for a piece of the American dream, learning
Right.
where the holes were in it, and then figuring out how they could find their way. And I'm actually writing a play about that now. It's called Hide and Hide. And it's a
I love
piece
that.
about an undocumented woman who finds that the American dream is a creature of mendacity and opportunism. And the
Mm.
great tragedy is that she chooses to assimilate into that lack of veracity.
Right.
Whereas her counterpart, who is on the run, a white boy from Texas who um, was in a sex conversion camp and had several murders under his name, chooses that
Mm.
he's got to live in his truth, which is that he's guilty.
Okay.
And so
I
that
love
and
that.
so that kind of dichotomy of response
Yeah.
to the erosion, the spiritual erosion of American ambition, that is the scene that we set onto the stage in that particular play.
Mm.
So that's actually what I'm going back to New York to explore when I return in September, late September, is I have a reading of
Beautiful.
that piece. Yeah. So that's Filipinx.
But I just wanted to quote you really quick.
Mm,
I love this quote. Um, it says, what you said,
mm,
not it says,
mm.
I'm blessed that my mother and many of my Filipino aunts married Africans and African American men because they followed the way of love and challenged their family's prejudices.
Mm.
And do you remember saying that?
No, when did I say that?
I don't know. This is another one of the things I found on the internet
I
about
don't
you.
know when in the hell. You know, it's
But
it's it's interesting bringing that up because, of
yeah,
course, that's a double-edged sword because a lot of there's a lot of colorism in the Filipino
yes,
community,
yes.
and the Filipino culture as a colonial culture, various colonists having influenced its way of life and its philosophy on racial hierarchy,
Mm-hmm.
is merely a reflection of the hate in the society in which we reside. And so,
Well,
you
and
know,
no, I'm gonna say, and Filipinos for the most part are brown people
well,
from
not
right
all.
or no,
No, they are
no.
just as multiracial, multicultural, and
Mm,
varied in skin tone and in ethnicity as
yeah,
anywhere else in the world. It
right.
really is an international crossroads,
Okay,
and it
okay.
was called the Pearl of the Orient. And I'm using
Ah,
all of the triggering language, so everybody get. I've said it, and I'm gonna say some more in a second. So trigger warning, honey. Yeah,
right,
I'm not
right.
gonna be PC because they weren't, and I need to dispel it through saying it. So
There
I'm
you
doing
go.
it. It was
Yes,
considered the Pearl of the Orient because it was sort of in the middle. It's a
yes,
gateway to East Asia. It's,
yes.
it's a gateway to South Asia. And so everybody has to pass through that port,
Right,
you know.
right.
And so you have in that culture a reflection of all of the hates and value systems of the world that colonized it. My
Mm,
mother tells this story of people watching a cartoon show when she was young.
mm-hmm.
And this cartoon show features now the name of this character I'm forgetting, but it's an equivalent of Sambo.
Oh,
And this
okay.
was a Philippine cartoon. And
Mm,
Sambo is drunk, and Sambo is lazy, and Sambo don't want to work, and Sambo's all of these negative, stereotypical visions of
mm-hmm.
black folks
Yeah,
that are being fed as a mirror onto nature.
right.
And if you live on an island that's isolated and that's financially dependent on its colonizers for trade, for
Yes,
significance, for political savvy, you tend to believe whatever that television tells you.
of course.
That's
Yeah.
your mirror onto the world. So my
Mm-hmm.
mother, grew up piped into images of negative visions of Black people. So it makes
Right.
sense that when some of these folks moved to the States in the 70s and the 80s, that was the image of Blackness that she encountered. We
Right.
don't talk about inventors, entrepreneurs, attorneys. We don't even talk about good, hardworking, decent Black folks. They don't even need to be, we don't even need to be talking about talented 10th. Let's talk about Sister Mary Johnson down the street, who cooked and cleaned for a living and saved $5 a week. And now she's sending her grandson to the city college.
Well, yeah. And you, this idea, and I love that, your mom came from this place where the idea of marrying or falling in love with a Black person was off the table, because this is what they are. This is what she grew up seeing.
Right.
Lazy, drunk, don't want to work, father too many children, blah, 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 blah. But, Scott and I have this story where I met his dad on his deathbed. And his dad was someone, from the South who just didn't see Black people socially ever. Like that wasn't something that was in his world. And he was dying, and I flew to Virginia to meet him for the first time. And Scott stopped me before we went to the ICU entrance and said, "We just need to tell him that you're here, and we need to tell him that you're Black." And I was like, he knows I'm here, but he doesn't know I'm Black. And anyway, he went in, he and his mom prepped him, and we had the most beautiful experience. And that's what really struck me about this, was that they followed the way of love. This is what you said, and challenged their family's prejudices.
Right.
He saw that Scott loved me. He called me beautiful when he saw me. And yes.
But isn't that the way Constantine converting to Christianity?
Yes.
Right as he's seeing his maker. That's the great myth of our last hour. And what that points to, Laura, is that when we boil our essence down to its alchemic basic nature, none of these inventions matter, because we are just living, breathing beings, gasping for air to stay awake 1 hour, 1 day, 1 moment longer. The body is in constant search for sustenance and survival. And none of that is determined by color or race or economic status.
No, it's not. And I think it's hard. I think it's challenging for people who don't have diverse lives.
Yes.
Or are open to that, to have that experience. And so Scott and I, we did not meet you, but we saw you on stage. Your play Lavender Men, which is phenomenal.
Thank you.
In that play, you are a character named Taffeta. And so the idea that, another one of your quotes, I ascribe to the belief. Listen,
I don't even know when I've said all this stuff.
You said, I ascribe to the belief that the theater is a holy place, a holy seeing place.
Yes.
Wherein we can envision worlds different and more inclusive than our own. If we can dream it in theater, we can build it in the world. So
that I do remember saying. That one I do. I remember that one.
And in Taffeta is like, I think one of the first things you say when you come on is you talk about being plus size. You talk about being, you talk about being Black, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, tell us, I know that Skylab was the origination, right? That's where Taffeta was created.
Well,
and tell me about that.
Yeah, let me say this. The play Lavender Men was born out of my life in Chicago between 2014 and 2016 while I was studying at Northwestern. And I was in what I believe to be one of the great eras of queer thought leadership, particularly in that city. That was Taylor Mack was touring the country at the time with that 24-hour American Songbook series. Mayfield Brooks had returned to the States and was building work that would later become their brand, Improvising While Black, which has gone on to be nominated for Bessie Awards and various other accolades in the dance performance space. Malandi Zandi was there, who's now a tremendous thinker, theorizing the idea of body and presence. I mean, this was just a tremendous time. Lucky Stiff was exploring their life as a director and interdisciplinary drag performer. I mean, these were the people that fed me and encouraged me, to embrace my whole self, the writer, the performer, the plus size individual, the person that was never going to fit into various boxes of physicality and identity. Well, let me keep going and say this. So the play originally was just two characters. It was Abe and his legal assistant, Elmer, Abe Lincoln and Elmer Ellsworth. And for me at that time, just the fact that we could explore queerness in this national treasure was a disruptive idea.
Yes.
But as I sort of evolved personally and came into my gender non-conforming self, we're getting to the last part of it, I started embracing my queerness, not only in terms of my physical presentation, my identity, but also in terms of the methods by which I write. And so after some time, a character came to me named Taffeta, who would narrate this play.
Yes.
And she was sort of an unreliable, saucy, and political narrator. Now, I put that, and he at the time was a producer at Skylight Theater, and I play aside for many years. And then I was invited by Jonathan Munoz Prue, who is now an artistic director here in Los Angeles at the theater associated with the LGBT Center. His mission was to further the cause of local and people of color in the playwriting sphere of Los Angeles. And he was working with the artistic directorship, Gary Grossman, to build a writers group that reflected the city in which we lived. And so they were recruiting. And so they brought me in to be a part of their writers group, which is called Skylab. So when I was thinking about what play to do at Skylab, I wanted to return to Lavender Men and figure out how to more rigorously incorporate Taffeta into the core narrative of Lavender Men. And what we found out along the way is that the play is not necessarily exclusively about Abe and Elmer. It's about Taffeta and her contemporary social nightmare in which she exists invisible and ignored as a Black Filipinx plus size gender nonconforming queer person of color who is completely ignored, disrespected, and rendered invisible by the white cisgender queer community from whom she seeks affirmation and approval.
Wow. Yes.
In other words, she out here looking for her white papa, as my father would call it.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about, Laura. And
I
some
do.
of your listeners know what I'm talking about. They used to tell these Negroes back in the day, if you're trying to make it in America, you better find you a white papa. Somebody who is a white person that is going to build a support system and an affirmation system around you so that the power structure would let you pass through and you will be okay. They say, if you Black, get back. If you brown, stick around.
Stick around. Yes.
So that, and this is old stuff. Now, some of these listeners on here may be mortified by what I'm saying. I warned y'all I was going to trigger you. But this is the world. My aunt grew up, my grandmother and two aunts were born between 1892 and 1910. So I sat down with them to dinner. I was living in LA in the 80s and 90s, but I was actually thriving and striving in a household of people whose mind was in 1932
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
Right. Right.
That's who read me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm so interested in history, I think, because I'm thinking about, we have already been there. I
Yes.
personally know we've already been to these places, because I would sit with these women and they would recount stories of bigotry and stories of joy that were so frighteningly similar, perhaps mirror images or replications of our current problems. And there I was in the Bush 80s, Clinton 90s,
Mm-hmm.
and they were unfazed and unbothered, because they're like, child, we've been there, we will survive, this too shall pass.
Right. Right.
That was the mode of survival in our household. So
Mm-hmm.
Skylab allowed me to sort of find taffeta, and then the world and life in the years after that, where I was in collaboration with Lovell Holder. We had a reading on Broadway
Right.
at Circle in the Square. We were supposed to do the show in 2020, and then it was postponed. And so I went into the pandemic, and we were out here in a social revolution. And I
Yes,
said,
we
wait a
were.
minute, I can't, we still in it. And I was
Mm-hmm.
saying, wait a minute, I cannot sit here and just speak, symbolically and floridly. I need to attack this shit.
Right.
I need
Right.
to name it and hold it accountable. And this was the era of our current Harlem Renaissance too. You
Mm.
know, Alicia Harris, Jackie
Yes.
Sibley's Drury, Michael R. Jackson, Jeremy O'Harris. Um, I believe this young man, Jordan E. Cooper, had started Ain't No Mo at that time, and plenty of
Mm.
others. And please forgive me, my people, that I have not named yet, but know
Yes.
that I am trying to signify that this was a great moment and continues to be. And we were all on the page
Mm-hmm.
saying, what can we use our art to do? It is a knife heated in coal that we will use to slice the fragile butter of bigotry.
Ooh. See, that was it. That
That
was
was
it.
it.
That was it. And taffeta is like, we were sitting, Scott and I, in this majority white audience. It wasn't all white.
Mm-hmm.
Packed.
Yeah, yeah,
Packed. We,
yeah.
like, they almost didn't have our tickets, and I was about to lose my mind, but they found them and we got in.
Ciao. Ciao.
But packed, and you are steady confronting racism and bigotry and just and just throwing it in the faces of
Yeah,
these two characters on stage,
right.
um and the audience, and they're
Yes.
applauding. They're applauding, and they are roaring from the crowd. They
Mm-hmm.
get it. They
Mm-hmm.
wanted it.
Right.
And I mean, Scott will probably talk to you a little bit more about this in a little bit, but I had not done any research on the play. I wanted to come in fresh and be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
And boy,
Mm-hmm.
was I. I was really
Well,
surprised. Yes.
I'm surprised because that I was really honored when Charles McNulty from the LA Times
Yes.
named the piece as a work of performance art
Yes.
amongst
Yes.
other genres. Because actually, more than anything, that's all I ever wanted to be. Was I wanted to be one of those weird kids doing that stuff. I grew up going to dance concerts because I'm interested in the power of abstraction. When I moved back to LA after undergrad, I'd go every year to Red Cat. That's actually how I found the choreographer for this piece, Jabel Medina, who did that love sequence.
We talked
Was I
about
was at a
that.
showing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
was at a
love that.
showing. I
Mm-hmm.
know, child. I was at a showing at Red Cat, and and he had a piece called David My Goliath, and I said, I told Lovell, our director, I said, you need to call this man.
Mm-hmm.
You need to call this man because
Yeah.
this is it. I don't know why. I can't tell you, but You need to call him because he is the real deal and he
Uh-oh.
is who's going to get us the feeling that we need for this sequence. And I was right.
I missed what you just said last because you were frozen.
What was I talking about?
You were talking about calling the choreographer.
Oh, I'll start there.
Yeah.
So, honey, I went to Red Cat fall showings and I saw this brilliant piece by
Yeah.
Jobel Medina called David My Goliath, which was a memory play but told through movement about two lovers that had long since fallen out of love, but the feeling of them haunted them both. And then there was a third character that was a narrator. Show does sound familiar, doesn't it?
Sure does. Yes.
To Lavender Man. And so I said, well, this person aesthetically and structurally understands how to do the kind of work that I would do. And so I called our director, Lovell Holder, and I said, Lovell, honey, you need to call this man.
Yes.
And he did. And it was the right fit. And it just, I was so moved by that dance, and
Yes.
so just I stayed out of it. I never once went in during their rehearsals because I didn't want it was intimacy work, and I didn't want anybody to feel like they were being watched by the playwright because I'm in a strange position because I'm both the writer of the piece and I'm also one of the actors.
Yes.
So I have that dual citizenship, so to speak.
Yeah, so you wanted to be mindful or respectful of their space. Yes.
And I also wanted to be objective.
Yes.
Because if there were any notes that I had, I wanted to be able to convey them.
Yeah.
Having not seen it. And Laura, honey, I didn't have any notes at all. I was floored. I was shaken up. I was just completely frozen in ecstasy. It was brilliant. From the first take, I was like, okay, that's it. I have no notes. Playwright is happy. And it's, part of producing and writing and collaboration is just putting the right people in the room.
Yes. Well, and I told you that was one of the things I asked you about when we did our pre-interview was that scene. And I wanted to know more about it because I was similarly struck by it. It conveyed without words something that you could have absolutely put words to. You could have had them talk that out, but the choice to make that dance, I thought was really just like profound isn't the right word. And it was I can't think of the right word, but it did something.
Let me tell you the words on the page.
Yeah. Yes.
So the words as they appear on the page. And okay, here's probably your last trigger warning because we have such limited time left together. So I don't think I can do too many more expletives in the next 5 minutes. So this is the last one. The stage direction is they fuck like wild boars.
That's it?
That's it.
Well, wow. Okay. So
from that, Lovell said, we're in a small space.
Yes.
We're right in front of the audience.
Yep.
Showing the literal version of this will not get us that much emotional storytelling mileage.
And that's what
What is the feeling?
Mm-hmm.
What is the sublime feeling of somebody really piercing the veil of your intimacy?
And that's what we have.
That's what you have.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what those brilliant minds came up with. And I love a challenging stage direction on the page.
Mm-hmm.
I love doing that because I think it invites imagination, collaboration, and spontaneity.
Yes.
And I think if we're not moving the craft of storytelling forward and challenging people and making them do what they were trained and dreamed they would do. As with any business, you're in something long enough, you just get into a rhythm.
Yeah.
Every time I start a new play, it's as if I'm reborn. I don't know a damn thing. I don't know how to write. I don't know how to structure. I don't know what dialogue is. I don't know anything. And I'm crawling and clawing my way to understanding.
Well,
I'm reborn
you're reborn.
every time I start a new project. And I have to be that way because each project is an opportunity for me to learn and grow and discover something different and hopefully constructive about myself as an artist and about how I can inspire my collaborators.
Mm-hmm.
See, I believe we need to take the ego out of playwriting and out of writing in general. There's such an interest in the singular auteur.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote this. These are my
Right.
words.
Yeah.
I am the vessel. I am the vehicle. I am the conduit through which the electricity of spirit flows and galvanizes you to see yourself differently.
Well,
But
and you're
I
also, yeah.
myself, I myself am a reflection of the world and the questions that it asks me to ask of it.
Yes. I was going to say you're also the collaborator because that's what you
Yes.
see on, and I don't
Yes.
know if I saw that on stage so much as if I learned about it afterwards. Is what I saw on stage. I thought was, brilliant, written by you. There's a director, there are 3 actors, there's this
Yeah.
writer, but what you're describing is a collaboration and the inspiration for that.
Oh
And
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
that was a staff of, there were easily 15 to 20 people if you count everybody, really.
Right.
Making that event happen. And each of them is a storyteller.
Yes.
And each of them is a writer.
The costumes were great too.
Honey, and it's interesting you talk about costumes. That was Wendell Carmichael. And talking about storytelling through what you wear.
Yeah.
I think any designer that's worth their weight in salt is they're some of the best editors in the world because they have to take the idea of this piece and make it manifest one moment, one step at a time through their designs. And so if there are ever leaps in logic in your work, they're going to be the ones to find it.
To make yes.
And they're the ones you should listen to about the revision or the adjustment.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you changed.
So I love that,
You changed on stage.
Yes.
You had very quick changes off stage, so there was some layering involved.
Yeah, oh yeah. I wore about 5 dresses at one time.
Yes, you did. And you weren't sweating. I was very impressed.
I don't know how I didn't sweat up there.
I don't know how you didn't either, but you were very, you came back fresh each time. I know Scott has come back on because I think we're just about out of time, and I know we got to get you back. But last thing I wanted to ask you, I had about 20 more questions, but I wanted to just make note of and hear what you have to say about the fact that you travel with a bag of Mom's Mabley records. And
okay.
And
yeah,
so,
let's do this.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, did you see The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, that series?
I did. I saw that episode.
Yeah, so tell me what you thought. Yes.
I love Wanda, and I watched her special, the one that she did recently. And I really do think that she is one of the heirs of Mom's Mabley.
Okay.
And her career. I think Mom's is such a life force.
Yes.
That you can't encapsulate her in one person.
Right.
Mom's Mabley is many, many people.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes way too many shoes to fill in one body.
Yeah.
So I think Wanda's one of them. And there's several others that, that have come along since then. But I do have a bag of records because when I was growing up, I listened to Mom's, and that's how I found my comedy and my sensibility.
I love that.
But
they
are calling me back. I got to tell you.
I know. I hear it. So just before you go back, first of all, thank you for taking this time with us. especially I know you were on a break between things. I'm sure you didn't get to
Yes.
eat lunch. So we appreciate you. Tell me where
Thank you
people
very
can
much.
find you and what's next for you.
Yes. So my Instagram is rogerq.mason.
I just followed you.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
My Facebook is Roger Q Mason, just my name.
Mm-hmm.
My Twitter is Roger Q Mason with no punctuation. And I can't say too much, but there is a motion picture in the works right now. And also, I'm going back to New York to work on Hide and Hide, as well as a couple of other projects of mine. So
we will
it's
be
going to be a
hearing.
busy close of the
Yes.
year. So
Yes.
thank you all so much.
Thank you, Roger. It was great.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Roger Q Mason, and I am the only Black Filipinx plus size gender non-conforming queer artist of color in the room.